Hello and welcome back to the Lore Raider. I'm sorry for the wait, I was kinda hoping I'd have reached my 100 subscriber milestone by now, but not wanting to keep you folks waiting any longer, I decided to throw this video together for your viewing entertainment. Today we'll be discussing a rather interesting battle in the Galactic Federation from the Metroid franchise and the Covenant Empire, the big baddies of the Halo universe. I say they were both interesting for a number of reasons. For one, they're both multi-species organizations, and they're also pretty small by sci-fi faction standards, not being true galactic governments and being close to very large multi-solar system sized factions, albeit the Federation is implied to be a bit larger. I know some of you will be quick to point out that unlike Halo, Metroid hasn't given us too much information about the Federation, and especially its military. But I think there's enough here that we can make very broad comparisons and go from there. So without further ado, let's dig into it. Now on my channel, I recently made a video discussing how powerful the Galactic Federation is. So let's talk about their opponents. The Covenant Empire was a religious hegemony made up of numerous alien races that all worshipped a species known as the Forerunners, as well as the technology they left behind across the galaxy. They operated in a rigid caste system, with the Prophet species being at the top, as they held significant political and religious importance, with the Thangheili, also known as the Elites, being the next most dominant species and largely left in charge of the Covenant military, and so on and so forth. They were exceptionally technologically advanced, boasting powerful plasma-based weaponry, as well as ships that were capable of glassing entire planets, and troops that had energy shielding technology. Where the Covenant suffers a bit though in this matchup is their faster-than-light travel capabilities. While they are still leagues better than other universes like that of Warhammer 40k for example, their slip space technology is markedly inferior to hyperdrive technology in Star Wars or the speed of Metroid chips. Speaking of, let's quickly talk about the Galactic Federation. The Federation was established in the year 2000 of the Cosmic Calendar and was formed to create a functioning democracy that would ensure peace in space in the Milky Way galaxy. The Federation has a council that represents the various member worlds, which is nominally ruled over by the Federation chairman. Unlike the Covenant, however, the Federation worlds were semi-autonomous of each other, and most did not seem to contribute to the military, and the Alliance seems to have primarily been an economic one. As while the Federation police certainly had its share of other species, the military was overwhelmingly human. Still, despite what appears to be a small military relative to its actual size, the military has been tested on numerous occasions. They actually managed to win the Pirate Federation War, as depicted in the prequel manga before the first game, and later in the Prime series, with the help of Samus, managed to defeat a much stronger space pirate force that was being headed by Dark Samus herself. And by Super Metroid, they had driven the pirates back to only one planet, Zebes. But how do these two factions compare to one another? Well, the first thing to look at is the sheer size of the two organizations. I think it's clear from the shots of the Federation Council meetings that even in its early days, the number of Federation worlds it had should exceed the number of Covenant worlds, as it only had 8 species in its hegemony. However, relative to its overall territory, the Federation seemed to have a smaller military, as they are well known for outsourcing the protection of expeditions into new territories to bounty hunters instead of their own career soldiers. But on the other hand, as I mentioned, they did win a protracted 11-year war against the space pirates, who themselves massively outpopulated the Federation. And when push come to shove, they did manage to extend into other galaxies to engage the pirate threat. Still, I think it's pretty clear the Covenant have a larger military, simply because they were more centralized than the Federation and more militarized than the Federation ever was. But how do the common soldiers from both sides compare to one another? While I have to credit the Covenant for maintaining a more diverse fighting force than the mostly human Federation, I do think that their advantages end here, as the Metroid universe is far and away stronger than the Halo universe. For a simple taste, normal space pirates are shown to be relative to Zero Suit Samus, both of whom can exist on Zebes, a planet with 960 times Earth's gravity. And Zero Suit Samus tanked a crash landing onto Zebes that's been calced to town-level durability with zero visible injury, and the pirates can harm this Samus. These pirates should then naturally scale to the Federation soldiers. This isn't even an outlier, as, things like the Talon 4 Metroids can tank the collision of the Leviathan onto the surface of Talon 4, which has been calced to a planet-level tanking feat. Then we get to speed, and it gets even more dire for the Covenant, as the same Zero Suit Samus managed to react to lightning in the Ruin Test boss fight, and again, that's her low-end speed feat. Needless to say, even the mightiest Covenant units, like the Hunters or even the heavy artillery platforms like the Scarabs, would be woefully outmatched by even the common career soldiers of the Federation, and that isn't even including the Space Hunters, a subgroup of bounty hunters who were specifically made to work for the Federation, or the terrifying Emmy robots who can overpower even a full-power Gravity Suit Samus physically, and would be immune to any firepower the Covenant could conventionally muster. So while the battles on the ground would handily go to the Federation, the space battles would be significantly more interesting. While the Federation does not boast shielding technology like the Covenant does, and their ships are significantly smaller than the Covenant's, once you take the power scaling of Metroid into account, the two sides are more or less equalized. The Covenant do have a larger navy, but the fact that I think swings this back in the Federation's favor is speed. Samus's gunships have demonstrated they can travel between galaxies in a span of mere minutes, while the Federation ships should be able to do the same thing. By comparison, the Covenant can take days to weeks to even cross a single arm of the galaxy. This means the Federation will be able to very effectively blitz the Covenant, respond to threats quicker, and organize counterattacks well before the Covenant could ever respond to them. Just like the ground battle, it's a battle of quality versus quantity, but I don't think the Covenant are substantially large enough to turn the tide against the sheer technological advantage of the Federation fleet, especially when they would be routed at every turn. I think the hypothetical Covenant-Federation war would be over as quickly as it began. The Federation, due to being in the Metroid universe, is just inarguably stronger than the Covenant, and they would slaughter them on the ground. And in space, due to their speed, they'd be out-positioning their adversaries as well. While they certainly have less troops, the Federation has everything they really need to win the war, and that's without bringing in their backup forces like the Space Hunters, who would be planet-level minimum, to Samus herself, who, if you know anything about Metroid scaling, you know that she could win the war by herself. There are the Emmy robots who can contend with full-power Gravity Suit Samus. There are the deadly cloned Metroids, and the cloned space pirate forces that we see in Other M and Fusion. Not to mention, it is implied that Federation capital ships would all be supplied with nightmares on board. So it would be a literal nightmare for the Covenant forces trying to hijack Federation ships. All in all, I have to give this 10 out of 10 times to the Galactic Federation. I simply don't see any path to victory for the Covenant, who lack any real answers for what the Federation is bringing to the table. This was certainly a relatively short video, but I wanted to get the content out there for you guys. What do you think of this matchup? Do you think I missed something about the Covenant that would sway the battle? Or do you think the Federation would have an even easier time steamrolling them? Let me know down below on what other scenarios you'd like to see next. Personally, I wouldn't mind doing a video on if the Halo universe could survive an X-Parasite infestation. But anyhow, stay tuned for my special 100th subscriber special, where I'll be taking a look at how strong Bayonetta is from the Bayonetta series. Until next time, be safe, be wise, and please pray for a true peace in space.